now CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver for us. Let's go back now to the House of Commons and continue to listen in there to the sports minister.
And to evaluate complaints. You know, my government did a lot since 2018. Now, there's still a lot of work to do. I've already said that in the coming year, I'm going to review the financial funding system as a whole. So we'll have to tighten up the conditions for getting federal funding. We want to have the best possible governance models, the best transparency, and of course we need to have people be members of this Sports Integrity Commission. So these are new steps that have been taken. Was there any verification of the Code of Conduct by your department? I know that Hockey Canada got funding even after there had been things disclosed. So are there any verifications made? You've said that the programs are more robust, that there was this new code of conduct set up by Ms. Duncan, and yet people continued to get funding anyway. Sport Canada is not a regulatory agency, nor does it have any investigative authority. So from the moment where, you know, our relationship with sports organization is primarily a funding one. We distribute funding to them, federal funding, and it is through these funding agreements that we are able to impose conditions. But Sports Canada doesn't have a mandate to investigate cases that may be revealed or disclosed to it. What Sport Canada does is it ensures that that provisions are in place within organizations. So independent mechanisms that allow for investigations to happen. One of the things that athletes told us about these mechanisms is that they thought that these mechanisms were not independent enough. In fact, often the independent organizations hired are paid by the organization. So that's why we created this Office for Sports Integrity. We set aside $16 million to fund it so that we could have a truly independent mechanism that athletes could turn to if they have a complaint, and so that it can be independently managed and there can be investigations and sanctions and recommendations made. There's been a lot of talk about cultural change recent years. So I want to know, how can you explain that the Prime Minister's office didn't make this a priority in your mandate letter? It's part of my mandate letter to work on safe sports. And in light of all of the allegations and stories that I've heard, you know, every day since I received my mandate letter, I've worked to strengthen safety in sports, to listen to athletes, to make sure their voices are heard, to talk to all of the stakeholders within athletics, and to develop new, stronger mechanisms. That's why I'll say again that I announced that we were going to review the entire funding mechanism and to tighten up the requirements on sports organizations to ensure that the safety and health of athletes is always the #1 priority. Talking about culture change in Hockey Canada, do you think it will also be necessary to have a culture change within Sport Canada? Because, you know, officials never informed you of the situation, and no one really took action on this file until it was public information. I knew when I came to office that there was a crisis and that we need everyone within the sports world to make the necessary changes to ensure that athletes' health and safety is a priority. Now, that includes the way things are done at Sport Canada. At Sport Canada, we're going to strengthen the ability to conduct audits and to make sure that sporting organizations are actually meeting the requirements we've set out. We're going to work with experts. You know, on June 12th, I announced a series of actions that we were taking, including having a committee of athletes at Sport Canada to get their advice, to hear about their experiences, and to get expert advice to help guide us about the best way to make sure those requirements.
Thank you, Minister. If you can hold that thought and expand on it at the next question, we're run out of time for this questioner. So second questioner is the Liberals, and it's Lisa Hepner. Lisa, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, through you, to the Minister for being here to answer our questions today. One of the things that was revealed through the media in the time since your last appearance before this committee is the idea that Hockey Canada had a fund for uninsurable emergencies. And through the media, we learned that if Hockey Canada didn't want to put a sexual assault allegation through their insurance, then they could use this fund. And I'm wondering what your reaction was to that news and what you make of that practice.
Je partage tout à fait l'indignation.
Well, I share the parents' indignation. You know, there are enrollment fees that went to pay for that, so that's something I learned. I learned that through the media. I think that Hockey Canada has an obligation to be transparent to the people who are giving them money, whether that's the parents of, children who play hockey, or sponsors, or the Canadian public through federal funding. So that's why I also asked for a financial audit to make sure that no public funding went to cover up this affair.
Thank you. You mentioned this a little bit in your opening statement, but can you describe for us your reaction to Hockey Canada's reaction to the news and the committee's work here and the steps that Hockey Canada is going to put in place or says it's going to put in place to address these cultural issues?
Je pense que c'est un pas dans la...
I think that it's a step in the right direction to have a plan. But this isn't the first time that we've heard, good intentions from Hockey Canada. And I think that there's still a lot of work to be done before Canadians can decide whether those changes are really happening within Hockey Canada. It's the time for action now. And the question everyone's asking is, did the people who were in power then, who were in charge of managing the situation, are they the right people to implement the action plan that they've put forward? Personally, I think we need more diversity around the decision-making table if we really want to see changes made at Hockey Canada.
And can
All right,
you clarify,
if you're just joining us here, we're just listening in there. That was Sports Minister Pascale St-Onge. She's there for her hour of questioning there, and you heard her talking about her response, her reaction, saying perhaps there needs to be more diversity there in Sport Canada. Those at the table there, that might be one of the areas there that they need to be looking at. And of course, she's been asked a number of questions here in terms of what the involvement is of the government, the funding, et cetera, what Sport Canada's involvement is. And she's come about, of course, with a number of the changes that they're going to be looking forward to, including that Office for Sports Integrity.